President, late last week it was reported that the Pentagon was contemplating ending critical military assistance to European partners, including the Baltic states, in a program known as the Baltic Security Initiative. That's a program which I helped to create years ago to strengthen military cooperation with the Baltic states, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. NATO allies themselves with a long memory of Russian tyranny and still very much in Vladimir Putin's crosshairs. The Baltic states are some of the most vibrant, dedicated members of NATO, spending well above proposed funding targets for defense. The dangerous idea to cut this assistance came just as another deadline from President Trump for Russia to end its war in Ukraine came and went without any consequence. In fact, Vladimir Putin responded like he always does after President Trump sets a deadline or lavishes him with a red carpet treatment in Alaska. He brazenly increased deadly attacks on Ukraine. That's right. While we were trying to get Vladimir Putin and the Russians to finally agree to a ceasefire and end of hostilities in Ukraine, he did exactly the opposite. That's what happened over the weekend, during which Russia launched one of the biggest aerial assaults on Ukraine in the entire war, and then again did it again this week. During these attacks on Ukraine, Russian drones entered into Nato airspace, specifically into Poland. Do we take that seriously in Chicago? You bet we do, because Chicago is second only to Warsaw in the percentage of Polish residents living there, people with Polish descent. Polish President Tusk said there were 19 Russian drones in the most recent incursion. Imagine if these were manned airplanes rather than drones. 19 bombers, fighters crossing into NATO territory, several of which were shot down, including with the help of allied Dutch F-35 fighters. Now, this isn't the first time Russian drones attacked a NATO territory. There was a drone crash reported in Poland a few weeks ago as well. And Russia has been behind a campaign of sabotage, assassination, and mayhem across NATO, targeting weapons supplies, infrastructure, and dissidents. So let me say clearly to President Trump, with Putin thumbing his nose at us, violating NATO airspace, and testing American resolve, this is not the time to back away from our frontline allies. It's certainly not the time to halt bipartisan congressional support to the Baltic states. We should not be fooled. Vladimir Putin is not our friend. The Baltic states and Poland have proven that they are. Vladimir Putin responds only to strength, and right now he and other autocrats around the world are bonding together. They sense America is getting weak, and we here in Congress should not be fooled either. We should ensure the Baltic Security Initiative is included in the Defense Authorization Bill and pass the Graham-Blumenthal legislation that tightens sanctions on Russia.
What Senator Dick Durbin laid out on the Senate floor isn't just a matter of foreign policy talking points. It's a reality check about the dangers simmering right on NATO's doorstep. When Russian drones crossed into Poland's airspace, we need to understand exactly what that means. Poland is not just another country at war's edge. It is a NATO member. And NATO isn't just a military alliance. It's the very backbone of collective security that has kept Europe from descending into another world war since 1945. So when Durbin paints the picture of 19 Russian drones crossing Poland's skies, he's asking us to imagine what those drones represent. Drones are easy to dismiss, small, unmanned, almost disposable. But swap them out in your mind for bombers or fighter jets, and suddenly you see what Russia is doing. It's not an accident. It's a calculated stress test. Putin is probing NATO's defenses, gauging our reactions, watching to see if we flinch. This isn't a new pattern. Look back over the past decade. Crimea in 2014, cyber attacks on Estonia, assassinations in the UK, sabotage campaigns across Europe. Each time, the Kremlin pushes a little further, waiting to see if the West draws a hard line or simply issues another statement. What Durbin is warning is that every time we waffle, every time we treat these violations as one-offs instead of as deliberate strategy, we're essentially teaching Putin that he can keep pushing. And here's the irony. As Durbin points out, some in Washington are floating the idea of cutting funding for the Baltic Security Initiative at the very moment Russia is escalating. Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, these countries aren't freeloading allies. They are punching above their weight, spending well above NATO's defense targets, and standing firm against a neighbor that once swallowed them whole during the Soviet era. They remember Russian occupation. They don't need to be convinced of the threat. So why on earth would the United States, the leader of the alliance, consider weakening their defenses right now? Durbin ties this back to something deeper: credibility. Alliances are built on trust. If the frontline states can't trust America to stand by them when drones are flying over their towns, why should they believe America will stand up when it's tanks instead? And make no mistake, credibility doesn't just matter in Europe. Xi Jinping in China is watching. Kim Jong-un in North Korea is watching. Iran is watching. They all want to see if America is serious when it says an attack on one is an attack on all. Because if they sense hesitation, it's not just Poland or Lithuania at risk, it's the entire security order of the free world. Durbin also grounds this issue in something uniquely American. He reminds us that in his hometown of Chicago, the Polish-American community is one of the largest outside Poland itself. That's not just a passing detail. It underscores how global politics ripple into local life. For Polish Americans, this isn't abstract. When Russian drones cross into Poland, it feels personal. And that's the point. Foreign policy isn't some distant chess game. It touches families, communities, and identities right here at home. At its heart, Durbin's message is sobering. Putin respects only strength. He has built his entire playbook around exploiting weakness, delay, and division. The West's hesitation is his opportunity. The more fractured our politics become, the more he senses that opening. Which raises the urgent question: how many provocations will it take before NATO draws a line that Putin cannot ignore? If 19 drones aren't enough, will it take 19 planes, 19 missiles? At what point do we stop being surprised and start being prepared? These are the stakes Durbin wants Americans to grasp. Supporting NATO, backing the Baltic states, keeping security commitments strong, these aren't acts of charity, they're acts of self-preservation. Because the day NATO's credibility cracks is the day the world becomes far more dangerous, not just for Europe, but for the United States too. If you found this breakdown helpful, don't just scroll past. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe, because these aren't side stories in the news cycle. These are the events shaping the future of global stability, and understanding them is the first step to making sure America doesn't sleepwalk into a crisis we should have seen coming.